Some people say, though, that giving up $5 million.
Well, we don't know. Okay, some figure.
Ballpark figure, $5
Yes.
million.
Yes.
For money that might have accrued to him anyway if it was in a blind trust, that's quite an active.
Yeah, but why did the money accrue to him in the first place? That we saw in the 5 days after he introduced Bill C-27, a pension bill that he had advocated before coming into politics, his shares went up a value of $2 million just in 5 days. More. Then there was a big drop as the. Look, the fact remains that the finance minister held and holds extensive interest in blind trusts, in numbered companies that he still won't tell you or Canadians about. We don't know what other conflicts of interest remain. All he says is, look, I work with the ethics commissioner, and he says she gave advice. We will question this to the ethics commissioner when we call her before a committee. I have a motion in front of the ethics committee to do just that. The idea that the Finance Minister of Canada, in charge of a vast budget, is regulating a business in which for 2 years he's had personal interest in, the insurance industry and other industries, leaves Canadians with doubts. You shouldn't have doubts about the reasons a Finance Minister does this or doesn't do that. The fact is this, is that from the beginning, what we've been told by the Finance Minister, he was going to put things into a blind trust, and that's what he told Liberals, that's what he told his former company. That turned out for 2 years not to be true, and it was only revealed when he was caught. We know that he told the Ethics Commissioner nothing about his French villa being in a numbered company, which breaks the ethics code. Only because reporters dug into it did we find out, and then he had to admit it. We also know that his mandate letter from the Prime Minister says your personal finances should bear the fullest public scrutiny. To this day, to your questions earlier 6 minutes ago, that's still not the case. He does not think he owes Canadians an explanation about how he's arranged his personal affairs and how his decision as finance minister would affect those. And I'll give you an excellent example. When we have asked time and again, did you recuse yourself from Bill C-27, where there seems to be a pretty obvious conflict of interest? He refuses to answer. We assume that he was in the conversations. He put his name on the bill. The error in judgment, the strange order of ethics is concerning and I think confusing to a lot of Canadians.
If you call this guilt money, and if it's not enough, and if it doesn't address the issue, if he's not giving answers, when do you ask for an examination?
I, through this past few weeks, have always expected that the Finance Minister would simply say the following words. I'm sorry, I screwed up, I was wrong, and here's how I'm going to fix it. Canadians are an incredibly forgiving people. We understand that mistakes, and he said some of these things were mistakes, but the error in judgment to this point, the lack of transparency, the lack of living up to the Prime Minister's promise to Canadians is deeply disturbing. The only way he gets to remove this cloud over his head is if he begins to take those kinds of steps. I just don't think turning over the profit guilt money over to charity is going to convince Canadians that this isn't going to continue to happen again.
So when do you ask for his resignation?
Again, we're seeing how this all plays out. I'm one of those politicians, perhaps rare, in the opposition that doesn't quickly jump to you need to resign, although we kid about it sometimes in the House. It's a very serious thing. This is the most important minister in Mr. Trudeau's cabinet, I would argue. The Finance Minister has just simply not recovered his reputation as being somebody who is straightforward and working on behalf of Canadians, working on behalf of himself and his friends.
Will you be getting the charitable tax benefit from this?
This is the problem when you don't clear the air. Every action you take to try to buy your way out of it begs more questions. We hope it's not going to the Trudeau Foundation. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure he'll find a good charity to put it towards. But will he get his benefit from the tax exemptions? And what will he do with those? Mr. Morneau will have to answer that. I know questions were raised on that, and he has not answered that either. It just creates this whole odor over the situation that is just unseemly for a finance minister who should be beyond reproach when it comes to self-interest and public interest. It should be clear. I've been talking to Liberals about it. There is obviously some, as if you'd watched the committee, there was a great deal of hesitation. It may be a better role for the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, which deals with when members step out of conduct when they commit unethical acts. It's actually PROC that might be best for that. We'll debate that. Whereas the Ethics Committee certainly deals with the Ethics Code, the Ethics Commissioner, and what might be those loopholes that Mr. Morneau exploited by simply placing a company into a numbered account, therefore divesting himself of any self-interest, which is ridiculous to most Canadians.
Is it really a loophole?
Yes.
But in the sense that he did control his assets, even though they were in a private corporation.
Right. Well, we saw this with the villa in France, right? That it was that a way to avoid taxes, use a loophole by creating a numbered company, by using a numbered company to control the shares.
Why wouldn't the ethics commissioner consider that he did?
Because within the Ethics Act, there's a difference between direct and indirect control. There's a difference between direct and indirect benefit. When you create a numbered company, you create, under Canadian law, an entity, a person.
How is it indirect?
That's the loophole. That's where you start to split the hairs to say, well, if it's a numbered company, then it's its own person. And if that own person, this new person, benefits, that's not me benefiting. If I'm the sole shareholder of that numbered company, of course, it seems obvious to everybody that you're exploring and you're illuminating.
Other people don't agree with that interpretation.
I don't understand your question.
That some people I've spoken to don't agree with the loophole interpretation.
Well, this is why we want to call the Ethics Commissioner forward. Mr. Morneau says everything I did was great. There's a very big distinction and difference between someone going into the Ethics Commissioner's office and saying, can I get away with this? And what if I do that? And what if I do that? What do I have to do? Versus the Ethics Commissioner recommending something to you. The Liberals have constantly said she recommended this and she recommended that. I have my serious suspicions that that's how the conversation went, because I've met with the Ethics Commissioner privately many times. She is very loath to give direct advice as to how to arrange your personal affairs.
There's a letter stating
that
you do exactly what he did.
Well, the screen, yes, but creating a numbered company. Right, but if the Ethics Commissioner is going to stand in front of an MP and say, I recommend to you to create a numbered company that you directly control and directly benefit from, then we'll have questions for the Ethics Commissioner. But the idea that advice would come forward from, she recommended on the ethics screen, which we also have some questions about, is if you hire me as your chief of staff, right, and I'm the one that's meant to hold you to account, how do we establish the power dynamics going to allow that to be a good ethical screen or not? We have fair questions, we think, to ask about the way things are done.